Sometimes, it's best to take a step back if you find yourself lacking motivation. This was something I personally witnessed during a pivotal match that may decide my boss's advancement. There was a noticeable sense of stress when the computer malfunctioned just before the presentation began, as he had consistently helped and encouraged me. My supervisor apologized profusely as he hastily attempted to restart the machine. The person in charge, however, was clearly agitated and got to his feet. He yelled, "I don't have time for a company that can't even put on a decent presentation." I could sense the pressure of the situation bearing down on my supervisor, who had a sad expression on his face. I felt something stirring inside of me, even though I was called a lazy employee. In this emergency, I made the decision to act. I said, "I'll do it," and I moved toward the stage. The guests gave me a disbelieving look, but as soon as I spoke, they paid attention. This was the turning point in my life, where it had become stagnant. Samuel is my name, and I'm 35 years old. I work for a travel company that arranges package tours for a wide spectrum of customers, both domestically and abroad. Being able to travel and experience other cultures while remaining in my own nation is one of the benefits of my employment. Though it was an exciting environment, I hadn't been all that ambitious. I found my work interesting and enjoyable, yet I was happy enough to keep things as they were. It was very wonderful that my colleagues continued to go up the corporate ladder. Some even achieved the position of assistant manager. Even though rumors about my lack of motivation since I hadn't taken any exams for promotions were circulating, I didn't feel envious. Lisa was among the new employees hired during April's personnel reshuffle. She was incredibly attractive and a capable supervisor who had grace while dealing with overseas customers. It was soon evident that she had been sent to our branch to be considered for the role of store manager. I once made a mistake when going through paperwork. The name and address of the hotel where a tour was scheduled didn't appear to be on the internet. I did some research and found that the hotel had moved recently. Discreetly, I brought the materials over to Lisa. "What about this hotel?" I began. Startled, she looked up the same website to support my conclusions. She exclaimed, clearly relieved, "You're right, thanks for noticing." We went back and forth about other hotels, and I brought up a feature that struck my attention each time. This location might not fit the tour concept. The emphasis on luxury seems a bit too much. "Well done," she answered. "How about this one? They are running a 3-month sale." "Excellent decision." Lisa hesitated and cocked her head. "Samuel, did you just talk to me like you always do?" "Yeah, I see." Her astonishment made me realize that people rarely had direct conversations about their jobs. "You do realize that every website we visited was in French?" she inquired. "Indeed, but I majored in it in college," I said, ignoring her praise. "That is quite remarkable. Are you able to read as well?" I felt modest, so I dismissed it. Subsequently, our branch made the decision to take part in an internal competition. Lisa's career may be greatly impacted by the project for which she was selected to take the lead. I was added to the team, most likely because of my fluency in French from our earlier chat. I didn't think I would be able to do much, but leaving the squad would just attract unwanted attention. I ran into Chris, a senior coworker from my former position, in the lobby one day while on a competition-related business trip. "Hi, Samuel." Looking dapper in a suit, he said, "What a coincidence." "So, is your company participating in the Sakura Group competition too?" he inquired after they had caught up. "Yes," I answered, sensing the weight of being seen as a formidable opponent. Lisa gave me a questioning glance as the talk came to a close. "Was that man employed by your former employer?" "Yes, he was a senior colleague," I said, attempting to mask my uneasiness. "It appears that he depended on you quite a deal." I probably noticed that my tone was a little harsh and soon stopped talking. Lisa appeared to be attempting to understand what I was saying, but I avoided the topic. That day's meeting with our customer went well, and Lisa got right into competition planning when she got back to the office. She was not that much older than me, even if she was my superior. She made an effort to live up to the expectations. Nevertheless, given that she was given such important tasks, it was fascinating. She was in a high position already, even if a promotion would imply a better evaluation and a bigger compensation. I was unable to see the advantages of her unwavering efforts. Was it a great feeling of duty, or was it just fun? In any case, I didn't understand what she was doing. While I frequently observed other staff members being overburdened with work and deadlines, Lisa already had it all: wealth and respect. What kept me wondering was what drove her. Oh, Lisa. She was still working past closing, so I called out to her. What's going on? The closing time has passed. She was surprised to realize that she hadn't been paying attention to the time. I was unaware of it. I'm grateful. Samuel, are you going home? All right. I have a question for you. I hope this isn't disrespectful, but how are you able to work so hard? It's not like you have to be participating in this tournament. You also have other jobs. Without doing all of this, you would still get promoted, right? All right. Lisa moved the chair beside her. She seemed to want me to take a seat. She showed me her own smartphone when I did. Pictures of a small child and what looked to be her parents were all over it. I'm this person. Really. My parents took me on numerous trips since they enjoyed traveling. In fact, the backgrounds of the pictures varied a lot. They included pricey landscapes, old buildings, and even some uncommon creatures. During my time as a student, I also took several trips with friends and family, and I still do. I treasure every single one of these recollections. They all appear to be fantastic memories. Indeed, traveling is a lot of fun. I accepted this position in order to let individuals have even more fun on their travels than they anticipated. Making travel more enjoyable for others is the reason for my hard work, not merely for praise or promotion. Of course, having a higher position aids in my goal achieving in this regard. It facilitates the approval process for plans. Lisa grinned and showed me her half-finished materials, which vividly displayed a lovely sea and boats. Vacations should be enjoyable. I find joy in the simple thought of seeing people enjoy themselves on my tours. Her eyes glistened as she talked, not displaying any signs of weariness. She was proud of the job she did. I'm sure people will enjoy the tour you planned. I love to travel as well. I feel motivated now that you mentioned it, Lisa remarked, getting back to her computer and rolling up her sleeves. She showed me the English competition script when I offered to help. How can I best communicate my main points? Could I ask you for some advice? Yes, this could, in my opinion, be made softer. For a Japanese audience, it might seem obvious, but for those from other nations, it might be confusing. What say you about this? Do I also need to change this part? That does make sense. We consequently both lost track of time and worked past our usual hours. This was the first time I had ever been so immersed in a task, which was unusual for someone like me who normally tried to avoid overworking. It goes without saying that Lisa had an impact on me. I became aware that I could see things more broadly and concentrate on things other than my current job. The competition day finally arrived. Among the 5 companies that presented, we were the 5th. Lisa patiently waited for her turn and even picked up some knowledge from the other lectures, despite the constant strain. I did as she suggested and listened to the talks. Lisa had her turn, walking up to the stage and setting her laptop down on the desk. Even after a minute, nothing happened as we waited for our company's emblem to show on the white screen. Lisa tapped away quickly at the keyboard up on stage. I'm sorry. Give us a moment, please. Emma, our senior colleague, went to see how Lisa was doing. What's wrong, Lisa? My laptop isn't functioning. It was all right just now. I'm attempting a restart. It is not turning on. Someone please grab the backup laptop. I hurried to the stage with Lisa's bags in tow to deliver the backup laptop. but it also refused to switch on. It was confirmed to be charged, therefore there didn't appear to be a power problem. In my panic, I yelled, "We should go back to the office and get another one." Emma waved it away right away because she knew she wouldn't make it in time. However, even this exchange's time was valuable. Lisa kept all of her script files on her laptop. She didn't have a printed copy. Presenting a tour without any images on the screen would be meaningless, even if she had printed it. "Is everything in order?" With a concerned expression, the host came over and informed us that our laptop was broken. An irate man who was sitting in the front row, probably an executive of the company, spoke up. "Enough now. Sit down if you're not ready." "I'm sorry. Give us a little more time, please. We have no time for a business that cannot even put up an appropriate appearance. Mr. White, you do realize that there are 4 other companies here." The foreigner seated next to him was asked by the man. The foreigner, frowning, put his documents on the table and appeared to comprehend Japanese. At that point, I thought back to Lisa's efforts over the previous few months. Her endless hours spent honing her strategy, her love for having people enjoy her trips. She had even visited the location to make sure all the details were correct. This is not how it is going to end. I handed the laptop over to Emma and Lisa and went up on stage. The attendees ignored us in favor of talking or using their cell phones. I inhaled deeply. "Don't worry, I've committed Lisa's entire script to memory. I apologize. It seems like our laptop is scared speaking to all of you, but don't worry. I can talk more clearly than it can. Kindly glance at the handout's first page." The man who had been annoyed a moment ago looked up sharply as I spoke. Mr. White and the other staff members were observing me as well. As directed, they shifted their focus to the handout. My English appeared to be interpreted perfectly. "Where are you interested in traveling?" "Naturally, to a fun location, correct?" Someone at the edge of the table spoke up as I carried on in French. "You speak French?" "In French," I answered. "Yes, but it's very basic." "But how's that for some Japanese humility?" "Excellent. I'm happy. Perhaps I ought to think about conducting tours as well." "That would be great." The non-French speaking individuals appeared perplexed. I said I was sorry in English, then translated into the just learned Chinese. All I wanted to do was ask him to grade my French. I appear to have passed. I'll be making sales pitches to our Chinese clients after my Chinese improves enough. The gentleman I made eye contact with had a name tag that said he was Chinese. He responded to my Chinese as I had expected. Since I didn't speak Chinese when I was at the previous firm, Chris and the other employees from other companies were staring at me, though I couldn't see Lisa and the others standing next to me. Chris was probably astonished too. Okay, enough small talk. Let's get the presentation underway. Returning to English, I proceeded with the lecture, announcing jokes here and there to diffuse the audience's mounting tension. I showed some interesting details about the tourist attractions while illustrating the slides. I completed my speech precisely on time, bowed, and ended. The audience applauded enthusiastically, as though they had just seen a show. I had communicated what was required, and Lisa had handled the remainder. I gave up my position on stage. The competition results would be communicated to us afterwards, but on our way out, Mr. White personally came up to me. "Your speech was really enjoyable." In English, he continued, "I hope you can make the excursion as enjoyable as we have planned." The staff members who couldn't understand were thrilled when I translated for them. We made it back to the office after we were successful, and Lisa ushered me into the meeting room. "Samuel, I don't know how to thank you." She had a dejected expression. The laptop had failed unexpectedly, even though I had planned ahead. It was only right to be annoyed. We're teammates, so it's only natural to cover for each other. I'm completely useless. Even though I spoke a lot, I ultimately needed to rely on you. We had no influence on the malfunctioning of both laptops. Even after coming back from the competition, Lisa's computers were still not functioning. We had given them over to the IT division so they could look into the reason. My preparation of the script and slides was lacking. I feel like a novice committing these errors. Your rapid thinking was extraordinary in comparison to that. I didn't think you would recall the script. Well, that wasn't all of it. We made it together. You spoke several languages with such ease as well. I was unaware that you were fluent in French. Yes, you were my go-to person for this competition. I have to get better at managing things by myself. Lisa smiled at herself, and I thought that was strange. Aren't you going to say let's keep working together? What do you mean? I mean, not to boast, but if you utilize me well, we might win future competitions too. That wouldn't mean anything, Lisa said firmly. If I don't win the competition on my own merits, how can I confidently provide tours? I can only be genuinely proud of something when it's my own accomplishment. Lisa's remarks hit me like a bolt from the sky. Unlike every other supervisor and coworker I had met, she was unique. Actually, there are things I've been avoiding to tell, like why you're so good with languages. Yes, will you tell me? Yes, since you're different from the others. I started to explain that because of my parents' employment, I had traveled the world since I was a small child. Since English was spoken in the majority of the countries, Japanese and English played equal roles in my life. I was surprised that none of the children my age could speak English fluently when my parents' job finally settled down and we relocated to Japan permanently. They had trouble writing and reading. I publicly used English as effortlessly as I would have in any other nation, and I couldn't understand why something so basic was so difficult for them. I always thought of school textbooks as children's books. My classmates trusted me, of course. Before exams, they asked for study advice and assistance with their homework. When I was younger, I delightedly assisted them and liked imparting my knowledge. I eventually learned to accept being someone else's tool. Not until I was a college student and working on a group project for my French degree did I realize something wasn't right. I was given all the duties by the group, including leadership, material creation, and even the presentation. They all responded to my questions about why I had to do everything with the same response. Because Jayan can speak English. They didn't see English and French as being different from one another, which surprised me. They held that proficiency in all languages was innate for anyone who could speak English. Despite the fact that we were taking a language skills course, they went for the quick fix in order to earn high marks. Because of this, the team as a whole enjoyed our successes equally, and my contributions also benefited others. That's when I understood I was being duped. Nevertheless, I felt it was more effective for me to be in control because it was only a student project and not particularly challenging. I obtained a job at a travel agency there. I was respected as a trilingual speaker of Japanese, English, and French at that point, as I had also studied French. I was initially really excited to put my skills to use and had a lot of work, but that didn't last long. About a year after I arrived, my immediate senior, Chris, made a task request. Because he wasn't very strong at English, he requested me to make a proposal, which I happily accepted because he had been looking after me since I joined. Chris asked me to assist with another work after expressing satisfaction with the proposal. It took a lot of extra and effort to assist him as I worked on my own project. However, the satisfaction of having our project accepted and developed into a working product was unmatched, so I ignored my complaints and carried on with my task. A year later, the situation deteriorated. I was still working under Chris, who had been elevated to section chief, when I could finally look at the company as a whole. I made the decision to use older documents as reference materials when I was assigned an increasing number of jobs. When I saw the approved project proposals, I was astounded. Chris's name was the only one on the report for a project that I had completed roughly 90% by myself. Before I joined, I had heard that his performance wasn't so great. I couldn't believe it when I looked through more proposals and paperwork and discovered that Chris's name had been substituted for mine everywhere. Chris was in fact the project leader because he was the one who sent our employer the final documentation. All of the research, ideas, and proposals, however, belonged to me. Furthermore, Chris was unable to produce the English paperwork. I searched for Chris, deciding to face him. I caught him chatting with our department boss, Alex, in the smoking section when he was away from his desk. "Chris, the Paris tour you submitted this morning was great," Alex replied. I was involved in the initiative that Alex was discussing. "Yes, since I have a contact there. I could gather a lot of information," responded Chris. He said just what I had said. My father's coworker, who was a big help to me when I was growing up, provided feedback for that tour. I couldn't resist saying, "Excuse me," and I moved in front of them. Chris appeared a little rattled, but he soon collected himself. "Hey Samuel, how are you? Do you also want to smoke here?" "No. I want to ask Chris a question. I understand that the initiative you were just discussing, the Paris tour, was my idea." "Yes, Jan was a big help. I appreciate that." "Assisted? That's putting it mildly. It went much beyond that." However, Alex nodded in agreement with what Chris had said. "Chris's guidance has been invaluable." "Is that accurate? Don't give me too much credit. I'll become conceited," a beaming Chris warned. I was able to break up their cordial conversation. Not just that, but the Hokkaido tour last time and the North America plan before that. Those were my projects too. "That's not the right attitude," Alex abruptly corrected me. "One does not work alone. When we operate as a team, we obtain results. It's not admirable to try to claim all the credit." I was taken aback by what Alex said. Was this something he said without any knowledge? But as a result of those fruitful endeavors, Chris received a promotion. He is the manager, so he is being recognized for leading the team, Alex said. "You should learn from Chris and not be so self-centered." I couldn't express how stunned I was. No, I didn't want to elaborate further. No matter how hard I worked, I would always be used for their own gain when I worked for superiors like them. My accomplishments would be absorbed into the admiration of others. When my mistrust of the people depending on me and the evaluators reached its zenith, I left that firm in less than a month. Fortunately, I was able to find a new job quickly because of my language skills. I work for the company right now. They wouldn't be able to take credit for my accomplishments in this organization. Naturally, I didn't put my all into my work, and I didn't reveal my language abilities. I reasoned that it would be useless to put in a lot of effort if it would just benefit someone else. However, after seeing Lisa, I understood how satisfying it is to have my work acknowledged. I used to want to work in a field that brought happiness to people, but somewhere along the road, I developed a selfish agenda. It was the appropriate choice for you to leave that organization. Of course, having fun at work is important, but it's normal to lose motivation if your efforts aren't properly recognized. Lisa stated with a hint of anger in her voice that although Alex is a bad assessor, I'm partly to blame. Things may not have gone that way if I had spoken with them more effectively. You can use that reflection in this situation. Nobody in this room will take credit from you while I'm here. How comforting that sentence is. To be honest, I had fun getting ready for this tournament. It was motivating to see how hard you worked. That makes me very happy to hear. Samuel, as your manager, you are no longer need to repress your emotions. Never hesitate to speak up. Follow your desires. Lisa's phone rang at that very moment. As she took her phone out of her pocket, she remarked, "Pardon me for a moment. This is Mayam Tours, Lisa." "True. How come?" "Really? I'll be there immediately." Lisa quickly got off the phone and swept out of the conference room, grabbing my arm in the process. What happened? They identified the root of the computer issue. We must return to the competition site. Was the problem at the venue? More like with the participants. On the way, I heard something startling. It was discovered that Chris was the root of Lisa's computer problems. He had positioned a strong magnet beneath the desk after his presentation, which broke the equipment. As he'd attempted to recover it, a Sakura Group employee noticed him. It was a totally different setting in the conference room when Lisa and I arrived. There was Chris, looking sad, with others from the Sakura Group and my previous boss at the company. An official came over to us and gave us the rundown. Chris had admitted to undermining us after being discovered. After his supervisor was contacted, the circumstances were re-explained. Lisa pointed to Chris and the others and stated, "This is where we were. Is it true? It's Junk's fault. His meekness was gone. Because he betrayed us and left the company, my efficiency dropped. Our performance stagnated, and his departure caused so much trouble," he cried, pointing at me. "Without you, we would have taken first place in this tournament. So you sabotaged John out of fear of his abilities." Lisa spoke, a hint of rage in her voice. I was unfamiliar with the term. Is it satisfying to stomp on other people's hard work? Given how often you've done it, perhaps you don't even give a damn. What do you even know about me? I'm aware enough to recognize that without John, nothing will get done. You claimed ownership of his labor. Here, who is the true betrayer? John was an employee of mine. I refuse to claim credit. Isn't what you did proof enough? Lisa gave Chris's manager her business card. This is my identity. Please bear in mind that I anticipate we will appear in court. Judge, how do you mean? It's clear. If someone were to meddle in our company affairs and do harm to our property, a lawsuit would be inevitable. Nobody could argue with her since her statements were so reasonable. It ultimately resulted in a civil case. Chris was fired for breaking several rules of behavior. He is not going to be able to get another employment while the trial is going on. I don't think he will be able to readily reintegrate into society even after the trial. Anticipatedly, I learned via rumors that Chris is currently leading a modest life and heavily indebted. However, Lisa was promoted as a result of her competition performance and her prior accomplishments. In addition, I received a promotion in recognition of my noteworthy efforts. As expected, my language abilities were discovered, and we were both given abroad assignments. Lisa smiled and remarked, "Researching on-site will be so much easier." We are currently sharing a home in our new assignment. I have a great deal of respect for Lisa now that she has drastically altered my life. I've grown to have feelings for her as a lady over time. She added that my commitment drew her in. I used to believe that effort was useless, but certain people understand it well. I regret not being more forthcoming and holding preconceptions, but I lacked the bravery. I promise to be more trustworthy going forward and make an effort to evaluate my subordinates fairly. At this company, I'm sure things will proceed smoothly.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children, with zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job, having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. "All right, everyone's presentations are done." "Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something." Nick interrupted me. "There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer." He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. "I'm leaving." I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. "Nick! What's wrong?" Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. "Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize." Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. "What kind of training are you giving your subordinates?" Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed, I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, "I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong." "Mike, what have you done?" Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. "I didn't do anything wrong." "You're still saying that? Look at him." Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. "I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract?" Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. "Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go." Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. "Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him." There's no way he was pushed aside. "Don't make things worse here." "He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he?" I don't remember that part." I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.